This is agitation and
Это
propaganda.
агитация и
We are not
пропаганда. Нас
interested
не
in the bare
интересуют голые
facts.
факты, нас
We are
интересуют
interested in
причины и
causes and
следствия.
effects. The
Правда
truth is
всегда
always
одна.
the same.
Здравствуйте.
Hello.
The Gaza Strip. Tires without skull. The Gaza Strip. There is no way to live up to the horn. The Gaza Strip. Quickly put on a gas mask. The Gaza Strip. Escape the fingers of hell.
The Gaza Strip is
Сектор
not a
Газа
band
— это не
that
группа,
sang
которая
vulgar
пела
songs
пошлые
about
песни про
fog,
туман,
a
а
place
место,
over
над
which the
которым
red
висит
fog
красный
of war
туман войны.
hangs. The
Самая
largest open
большая
prison in the
открытая
world.
тюрьма в мире.
That's what
Вот
gas
что
is so
такое
far
далекое
from
от
us.
нас
But
Газа.
apparently,
Но, видимо,
once Soviet
когда-то
television
советское
went a little
телевидение
too
чуть
far with the
переборщило с
international
международной
panorama.
панорамой.
Bottom
И то
line,
в
at
конце
the end of the
80-х
80s,
многим
it
казалось,
seemed
будто
to
всех
many
этих
that
мест
all
либо
these
не
places
существует
either
вовсе,
did not exist
либо
at
они не
all,
имеют
or they had
никакого
nothing to do
отношения
with
к нам.
us. Better
Лучше
let's
давайте
talk
про
about store
магазинные
shelves,
полки, про
about
шмотки,
clothes and
дефицит.
scarcity. And then
А
bam,
потом
and
бац, и
similar to
похожие
Gaza,
на Газу
and
резервации
reservations began to
начали
appear
возникать
side
под
by
боком.
side. It turned out
Оказалось,
that the
оккупированные
occupied
территории,
territories,
чекпоинты,
checkpoints,
стены,
walls,
гетто,
ghettos,
национальная
national
рознь,
strife,
дискриминация по
discrimination on
национальному
the basis of
признаку мало
nationality does
зависит
not
от
depend much on
географии.
geography. It turned
Оказалось,
out
Гарлем
that Harlem
вполне
may
может
well move
переехать
to
на
the
окраину
outskirts of
Воронежа или
Voronezh or
Братска, а
Bratsk,
сектор
and the Gaza
Газы
Strip
в
to
Тирасполь,
Tiraspol,
Донецк или
Donetsk, or
Карабах.
Karabakh.
Вот только
Only now
теперь
the attitude
отношение к
towards
тому
that very
самому
sector
сектору
has
сменилось на
changed to the
противоположное.
opposite.
В
Thousands of
Израиль
yesterday's
переметнулись
compatriots
тысячи
defected in
вчерашних
Israel,
соотечественников. На
and
Кавказе
preachers of
оставили
Islamic
кровавый след
terrorism left a
проповедники
bloody
исламского
trail in the
терроризма.
Caucasus. Russia
Россию
was
захлестнула
overwhelmed
волна
by the
миграции
wave
из
of
Средней
migration of
Азии.
Central Asia.
Поэтому вора в
Therefore,
израильском
the thief in the
конфликте
Israeli
среднестатистический
conflict,
обыватель,
the
как
average
правило,
man in the
сочувствует
street, as a
той
rule,
стороне, которая
sympathizes with the
кажется ему
side that seems
понятной, которая
understandable to
похожа на
him,
него
which
внешне и
looks like
тоже
him
обороняет
outwardly,
покой
and
своих
also
городов
defends the
от
peace of their
орд
cities
смуглых
from hordes of
варваров и
swarthy
фанатиков.
barbarians and fanatics.
Don't kill the case, brother. Here,
Not a brother.
the black has been.
This, of course,
Это,
speaks
разумеется,
more
больше
about the
говорит о
state of
состоянии
mass
массового
consciousness in
сознания
our
у нас
country
сегодня.
today. In the
В
country
стране,
that defeated
разгромившей
fascism,
фашизм, на
the
бытовом
basest
уровне
prejudices are
распространяются самые
spreading at the
низменные
household level.
предрассудки.
Kitchen
Кухонный
anti-Semitism
антисемитизм
perfectly
отлично
gets
уживается с
along
таким же
with the same
расизмом, а
racism
еще с
and also
брезгливым и
with a
озлобленным
squeamish and
отношением к
embittered attitude
иностранным
towards
рабочим.
foreign workers.
Добавьте к этому
Add to
полный
this
развал
the complete
образования,
collapse of
отсутствие не только
education,
знаний,
the
но
lack
даже
of not only
стремления к ним,
knowledge, but
и вы
even the
получите
desire for them,
несусветную
and
кашу
you
в
will get an
головах.
incredible mess in your heads.
His Holiness Patriarch Alexei II of Moscow and all Russia refused to submit to the Jewish regime, for which he was killed in Paradokino.
As a result, our
В
country
итоге
was
страну у нас
flooded with
заполонило
visiting cattle.
приезжее
We are
быдло,
ruled by
правят нами
Pindos and
пиндосы
Jew
и
Masons,
жидомасоны,
with whom a
с
well-known
которыми 20
TV
лет
hero has been
напряженно
fighting hard
сражается
for
хорошо
20
известный
years. However,
телегерой.
for some reason,
Правда,
the
в
Forbes
списке
list
Forbes
does not
почему-то
entirely
сплошь
include titular
нетитульные
surnames.
фамилии,
The
герой
hero
периодически
periodically
обнимается
hugs
с Нетаньяху.
Netanyahu. At the
При
same
этом
time,
наш
our own
свойский
Israel,
Израиль, где
where they
ненавидят
hate
фашизм
fascism
и
and
празднуют
celebrate the
9, а
9th,
не
not the
8
8th of
мая,
May,
утюжит с
irons our
воздуха
Syria from
нашу
the
же
air
Сирию
and
и не
supplies
вовремя
weapons to
поставляет
Georgia or
вооружение
Ukraine
Грузии или
at the wrong
Украине.
time.
В
As a result of a
результате
missile
ракетного
strike
удара
on
по Сирии
Syria,
один человек
one
погиб,
person
еще
was
6
killed
пострадали.
and 6 others were
Губернатор
injured.
провинции
The governor
Латакия
of Latakia
сообщил, что
province
атаки
said
подверглись
that
гражданские
civilian
объекты, в
objects,
частности
in
склад
particular a
пластиковых
warehouse
изделий.
of plastic products, were attacked. And
И
now,
вот теперь,
when
когда за
50
неделю
children
в
die
Газе
in
погибает
Gaza in a
полсотни
week,
детей,
it
для
is
нас
in
это в
fact
сущности
a trifle for
мелочь.
us. There are
Там
the
ведь
same
те же
black,
самые черные,
bum, and
БЛМ,
BT
ЛГБТ,
monkeys there.
обезьяны,
Big deal. A
подумаешь,
chronicle.
хроника.
There is someone
Есть
you will
кого
regret
пожалейте
closer.
поближе,
Burn
горя
with fire
огнем
your
ваш
Middle
Ближний
East.
Восток.
Everything is
Все
there
там
from
из
the
одного
same
корня,
root.
пусть
Let them
перережут
cut
и
and remature
перевзрывают
each
друг
other.
друга, не
It does not
касается.
concern.
And this is purely not a problem.
Guys, fascism is a
Фашизм — это
virus.
вирус, это
It is the
терминальная
terminal stage
стадия
of
капитализма.
capitalism. There
Не
are no
существует ни
peoples or
народов, ни
countries
стран,
that are
которые
immune from
обладали бы
it. Neither the
иммунитетом от
victory in the
него.
war
Иммунитеты
nor
не
the
дают ни
genocide
победы в войне,
experienced
ни
give
пережитый
immunity.
геноцид.
On the
Наоборот,
contrary,
некогда
the once
пострадавший
affected
народ
people
очень
very
легко
easily turn
превращается
from a
из жертвы
victim
в
into a
насильника,
rapist
если
if
доверяет
they
свою
entrust their
судьбу
fate to
капиталу.
capital. After all,
Ведь капитал
capital
и есть
is the
та
force
сила,
that
которая
generates
порождает
nationalism.
национализм.
Someone, not the
Кто-то, не
oligarchs, of
олигархи,
course,
конечно,
must
должен
answer for the
ответить за
suffering and
страдания и
humiliation of
унижение
the nation.
нации.
Let it
Пусть
be
это будет
another
другая
nation.
нация.
So it was in
Так было в
Germany after the
Германии после
Weimar Peace.
Веймарского мира.
So it is
Так
happening
сейчас
now in
происходит
Poland,
в Польше,
in
в
Turkey,
Турции,
or in
на
Ukraine,
Украине, в
in
Азербайджане, в
Azerbaijan,
Армении.
in
Так
Armenia.
происходит
So
в
it is happening
Израиле,
in
так
Israel.
происходит в
So it
странах
is happening in the
исламского мира и
countries of the Islamic
много-много
world and
где
many,
еще.
anywhere else, the wave of
Поднявшаяся
militant
сверху
nationalism
волна
that rose from
воинствующего
above, a
национализма,
whole series
целый
of
ряд
repressions
репрессий
by
со
those in
стороны
power
властимущих
and
и
avenging the
мстящих
suburbs
окраинам
for
за их
their love of
свободолюбие
freedom caused a
вызвали
wave of
ответную волну
nationalism from
национализма
below,
снизу,
sometimes
переходящего
turning into
порой в
crude
грубый
chauvinism,
шовинизм.
the strengthening of
Усиление
Zionism among
сионизма среди
Jews, the
евреев,
growing
растущий
chauvinism in
шовинизм в
Poland,
Польше,
pan-Islamism among
паноисламизм среди
Tatars, the
татар,
strengthening of
усиление
nationalism among
национализма среди
Armenians,
армян, грузин,
Georgians,
украинцев,
Ukrainians, the
общий
general
уклон
bias of
обывателя
the
в сторону
layman towards
антисемитизма —
anti-Semitism.
все
All
это
these
факты
facts are well known.
общеизвестные.
The wave
Волна
of nationalism
национализма
was
все
coming
сильнее
stronger and
надвигалась,
stronger,
грозя захватить
threatening to
рабочие
capture the
массы.
working
И чем
masses.
больше
And the
шло
more
на
the
убыль
liberation
освободительное
movement waned,
движение,
the more luxuriantly the flowers of nationalism bloomed. Here we turn for help to perhaps the most competent specialist on the national issue, to the young Joseph Jugashvili Stalin. An article written by him at a similar time, "The socialist movement has been defeated. The reaction is ferocious. Thugs hired by the security guard are hitting in the face, not on the passport. Military preparations are everywhere. However, today, Stalin, a dangerous troublemaker and revolutionary, is very much loved by our cheering patriots. They compare with Putin, trying to flatter the latter. They honor, but they forget to read at the same time, and therefore attribute various devilry to the author. Well, it's like the same impercist of Russian patriotism and healthy anti-Semitism, because of which Trotsky Bronstein allegedly got nuts. It doesn't bother anyone that the leadership of the party, the army, the special services under the crypto-anti-Semite Stalin was full of Jews. The credits of Stalin's films are full of Jewish surnames, and the state of Israel itself could hardly have been born in the 47th year without the participation of the USSR and Stalin personally. A nation is first of all a community, a certain community of people. The community is not racial or tribal. The current Italian nation was formed from the Romans, Germans and Prussians, Greeks, Arabs and so on. The French nation was made up of Gauls, Romans, Britons, Germans and so on. The same must be said about the British, Germans and others, who have formed a nation of people of different races and tribes. So, the nation is not racial or tribal, but a historically formed community of people. Thus begins the work that made Stalin a guru on the national question, recognized not only by the party, but also by Lenin. This is important, because the main revolutionary Marxist in the district did not call the author of the text a wonderful Georgian for his beautiful eyes. And it was Stalin, not Lenin. Or rather, they together, Stalin and Lenin, laid under modern Russia the very atomic bomb that torments Putin so much, the bomb of proletarian internationalism. They planted an atomic bomb, a building called Russia. It also jerked then. Here's the thing, sorry, 2 words will have to be said off topic. If you are building socialism, you cannot divide regions according to nationality. It is impossible to create cultural and national autonomies as it is now. For a bourgeois state, it may be suitable. Yes, it will be dynamite for the Soviet state. Therefore, if you do not want the bourgeois state of Ukraine to fall from the Soviet Union, do not let the bourgeoisie come to power, either at home or in Ukraine. Create mixed multinational economic districts, transferring territories back and forth, while simultaneously etching nationalism from both sides. You are not supposedly developing millennial Russian, Tatar, Ukrainian, Armenian, or Bashkir peoples by supporting the best in every culture and zeroing out the worst in every culture. You are building a new society and a new community, the Soviet people. That's the only way it was done. I'm not talking about the fact that the bomb that does not give Putin peace of mind, the right of Ukraine, Belarus and Transcaucasia to secede, has already exploded once under the Soviet Union in the 91st year. All passed. Inside the reservations of modern Russia, that is, neither Lenin nor Stalin could actually leave any bombs even if they wanted to. It exploded when Yeltsin announced the distribution of sovereignty, when citizens like Sobchak appeared, wandering around all the suburbs and supporting all the national bourgeois anti-Soviet fronts. Here are the bombers for you.
We hope that the curse that has accompanied life in this country for 73 years, which has carried more than 60 million human lives, which has destroyed the foundation of the Christian nation's children, this curse as a species, it is said, will disappear in an instant as a diabolical one. This has already happened. Welcome, Your Highness. Welcome.
Here are the bombers. Yes, that's another conversation. Let's leave it for now. However, exactly on this understanding of the issue, the Bolsheviks' criticism of the Jewish socialist nationalists from the riot movement was once based. To preserve all that is Jewish, to preserve all the national characteristics of Jews, up to the point that they are obviously harmful to the proletariat, to restrict Jews from everything that is not Jewish, even to arrange a special hospital. That's what the rebellion has descended to. Comrade Plekhanov was 1,000 times right when he said that revolt adapts socialism to nationalism. Stalin embroidered the soil from under any nationalist, gives a materialistic definition of the nation, implicated not on beliefs and fairy tales. The nation is not a constant, not a testament of great-grandfathers, but a product of bourgeois relations. A nation, like any phenomenon of the material world, has a beginning, a high point of development, and an end. There is no nation before the bourgeois mode of production. How is it that there is no nation? The chauvinist Guardian will exclaim, and who dug up the Black Sea, and who baptized Russia. Yes, that's it, doesn't exist. A nation is not a son or a god without a beginning and an end. There are no immortal Ukrainians, Germans, Englishmen, Russians, Hungarians, Armenians, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Tajiks, Georgians, Jews, or Turks. Like everything in nature, and absolutely everything in history, nations are formed, appear at a certain moment when objective material conditions have developed for this, and disappear over time. A nation is a historically established, stable community of people that arose on the basis of a common language, territory, economic life, and mental way of life, manifested in a common culture. None of these features, taken separately, is sufficient to determine the nation. Moreover, the absence of at least one of these signs is enough for a nation to cease to be a nation. Only having all the attributes taken together gives you a nation. One more time. Language, territory, economic life, mental way of life, expressed in culture. The most important thing here is economic life. This is the point at which the development of the nation merges with the development of the economy. The development of the economy leads to the formation of bourgeois states. It is logical and natural that the bourgeoisie of each nation seeks to get its own state, because with its help it is more convenient to defend its bourgeois interests. The struggle began and flared up not actually between the nations as a whole, but between the ruling classes of the commanders and the repressed nations. The main question for the young bourgeoisie, the market, to sell their goods and emerge victorious in competition with the bourgeoisie of a different nationality. That's her goal, hence her desire to secure her home market. The market is the first school where the bourgeoisie learns nationalism. Just like that, there is a market, there are nations, and there is nationalism, no market. So, you are still at the initial level in this game. Sorry, at best. You have disparate tribes and tribal communities, well, feudal principalities, well, at most a centralized, but motley feudal state. You can fight for the land, for women, for horses, slaves, even for the faith of the Tsar and the fatherland, but not for national interests, because there is no commodity production, there is no market, there is no bourgeoisie, and you don't have a nation yet. There will be a market, there will be a nation, there will be nationalism. Actually, the entire post-Soviet history is a clear proof of the validity of these words. What not to grab from last year's Armenian-Azerbaijani war to the Donbass brewing again. The bourgeoisie, constrained on all sides by the oppressed nation, naturally begins to move. She appeals to her native grassroots and begins to shout about the fatherland, passing off her own cause as a national cause. She recruits an army from her compatriots in the interests of the motherland, and the lower classes do not always remain indifferent to appeals. The national struggle in the conditions of rising capitalism is a struggle of the bourgeois classes among themselves. Sometimes, the bourgeoisie manages to involve the proletariat in the national movement, and then the national struggle takes on a nationwide character and appearance. But this is only an appearance. In its essence, it always remains bourgeois, profitable, and pleasing mainly to the bourgeoisie. And now let's return to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. It is curious that in the first lines, Stalin refers to Marx and Kautsky, who predicted the Jewish nation will not be able to form. It will remain a fragmented minority within other nations. Even the young 25-year-old Marx, who, as the Black Hundreds tell us, worked for the Rothschild Zionists, has a separate work on the Jewish question. In Wikipedia, it goes under the tag anti-Semitism, because there in this work, you can stumble upon very politically incorrect formulations at the present time. Money, this is the jealous god of Israel, before whom there should be no other god. Money does not harass all the gods of man from a height and turn them into a commodity. Money is the universal, established as something independent value of all things, They have therefore deprived the whole world, both the human world and nature, of their own value. Money is the alienated essence of a person's work and his being, and this alien entity commands man, and man worships it. The God of the Jews became worldly, became a world God. The promissory note is the real God of the Jew. Mein Kampf, of course, has absolutely nothing to do with it, and only a madman can call the Jew Marx an anti-Semite. Young Marx, an audacious philosopher arguing with the Hegelian idealist Bruno Bauer, this Marx has not yet taken up economics, has not yet written Capital, and has not discovered surplus value, but he already guesses social being determines social consciousness, not the other way around. Religion and various prejudices have not been blown into your head. This is a reflection of the way you run your household. You, or the Jews. By the 19th century, commodity-money relations, so inherent in the Jewish tradition, had already covered the whole world. Capitalism is the triumph of such a tradition. Where can the trendsetters of market fashions go to now and lock themselves in? It is necessary to overcome capitalism, but not by an individual people, but by the whole of humanity, since humanity is completely affected by the cult of money. And in the 19th century, it really seemed that with the development of capitalist production, Jews who were losing their attraction, and very different from each other, were likely to assimilate and dissolve. In itself, this for the communists, as you know, has never been a disaster at all. If you have to dissolve in the best, more progressive, and not in the worst and backward, therefore, cultural national autonomy, Stalin argues, in the absence of a historical territory, would be a step back for the Jews, would give the Jews, more precisely, the Jewish bourgeoisie, territory, market, nation, and national interests. But why would working Jews do that? It would no longer be a revolutionary, but a counter-revolutionary force. Stalin opposes such autonomy against the Bund. True, after the revolution, in 20 years, in May of the 34th, the Jewish Autonomous Region will appear in the USSR, and in another 14 years, the Stalinist and Soviet Union will become the first country to recognize Israel. But does this mean that Stalin has changed his mind? Not at all. The government in Birobidzin was Soviet. Proletarian Jews came there. But with Israel, well, it just didn't work out. Yes, after the war, Moscow wanted to make him an outpost of socialism in the Middle Eastern Ocean of medieval obscurantism, to provoke a revolutionary movement in the colonies and monarchies of the Gulf. Compared to the sultanates and kingdoms, where slavery was preserved, where heads were cut off, Israel seemed like a really fashionable, cool, and progressive project. There were many anti-fascists and communists among the Jews after the nightmare of the concentration camps. How was it possible to deny them a chance? Yes, only as a result of the subsequent massacre and internecine strife. It was not the communists, Zionists, and followers of the Bund who took advantage of the chance. Some simply pretended to be communists in order to get help. The Jewish bourgeoisie won. Nationalism has strangled internationalism. It's not about the religiosity of ritual research. For me, being Jewish means, and has always meant, being proud of belonging to a nation that has preserved its distinct identity for more than 2,000 years, despite all the pain and suffering that it had to go through. And in the future Israeli premier, not only in it of course, an activist of the labor movement, was eaten by a nationalist Zionist. Realizing what was going on, Stalin would deny Goldie Meir the right to repatriate Jews from the Soviet Union. Soviet citizens are not looking for good from the good. Then Israel breaks with Moscow, throws itself into the American arms, and for decades becomes the 51st state, the stronghold of the reaction of imperialism, militarism in the Middle East. For exactly the same nationalistic reasons, Arab regimes will rush to seek protection from the Kremlin. Some figures quickly turn into socialists, although they collaborated with the Germans during the war, just to get Moscow's help. A new era will begin, which you can talk about for hours here. Well, in general, the American TV presenter Trevor Noah spoke well on this whole thermonuclear issue. In front of us is a ball of such size that it can be unwound to complete exhaustion.
And you know what makes it even harder?
Do you know what the problem is? The fact is that the search for the right and the guilty depends on what time you set as a reference point. This week is a perfect example. If we start with the bombing of Gaza by Israel, then Israel is a villain. because it is he who is bombing Gaza. But then you rewind even further and say, wait, Hamas fired rockets at Israel, so the villain is Hamas. But then another step, and exactly, Israeli police broke into the mosque and began beating people there during Ramadan, holy time, according to the Muslim calendar. So after all, Israel is the instigator. But here we are reminded of the Palestinians who threw stones. But the Israelis threw them out of their homes. But the Intifada. But Israel is seizing more and more new land. But the Arabs invaded.
And more.
Who knows how long this can go on? So you can argue with primitive people who hammered each other with sticks, and one will turn out to be a Jew, and the other an Arab. This guy knows what he's talking about. Before becoming the host of Comedy Central, Trevor lived in South Africa, in the country of undefeated apartheid. The father is white, the mother is black. Such a marriage was considered a crime there. At home, Trevor fell into the official category of color, with all the accompanying restrictions. From the point of view of linguistics, there seems to be nothing sinister in the word apartheid, as well as in the word fascism. Well, sorting, well, the division of citizens into categories, various rights, powers, duties. Well, yes, there are evictions, seizures of property from lower cash registers. Well, yes, mixed marriages are prohibited, but there are elections, parliament, the court, liberal democracy, after all. And yet, for some reason, apartheid is recognized by the International Tribunal as a crime against humanity. And for some reason, Israel remains the only territory to which this term is applied after the abolition of African apartheid. Apartheid implies three elements: the intention to maintain a system of domination, the constant suppression of the individual, and the inhumane acts committed at the same time. Israel has a legitimate right to defend security. Nevertheless, we have documented a large number of inhumane actions that have nothing to do with security, but reflect the intention to control the territory and demographics. We are talking about the incessant land grabs, the uncontrolled expansion of settlements in the Palestinian territories, the regular demolition of houses, the isolation of many Palestinians in overpopulated and uninhabitable enclaves. Example: Israel vaccinated all Jewish and Palestinian citizens, but in the West Bank organized vaccination only for Jewish settlers, depriving Palestinians of such an opportunity. You may not like the Soros human rights activists and Human Rights Watch, but the Apartheid Convention was approved by the UN General Assembly back in the 73rd year. Apartheid. This is a violation of civil rights on a certain basis. Imagine you are an inferior member of society, an untermensch, let's say, a Russian person in the Baltic states, not a citizen. Apartheid, in a mild form. However, in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, apartheid is not soft, so it causes analogies rather with the Warsaw Ghetto. This, I note, is not my opinion or that of some anti-Semites. This is the opinion of many Israelis and goes, of course, passions and emotions will always rage around, just like the word genocide. The word apartheid has long been a bargaining chip, a tool in the hands of bourgeois politicians. Turkey and Armenia, Bosnia and Serbia are arguing about the genocide, as if recognizing the Serbian genocide in hindsight. Putin says that the genocide of Donbass is possible. And at the moment when Israeli aircraft demolishes residential buildings in Gaza, the US State Department expresses concern about the genocide of national minorities and Muslims in Chinese Xinjiang. It's a tool, a policy, a business, nothing personal. And yet, in the case of Israel, it's not just politics. There are indisputable signs of apartheid. The most recent law of the 18th year on the state of the Jewish people. It says the right to national self-determination in Israel is the exclusive privilege of Jews. The law allows for a policy of filtering and segregation of people in settlements on religious or national grounds. This is a fundamental element of apartheid, wrote the Israeli newspaper Haaretz. Everything said, not news. Many people in Israel understand this. What is happening is the subject of lively discussion, and even more so for progressive forces in Israel. A huge number of films have been made about this.
המעגל הראשון, הרוצחים, והמעגל שמסביב היה אותו מעגל. בגיל 19 הרגשת אשם, לוהקת על תפקיד הנאצי בעל כוחך. זה לא שלא היית שם, היית שם. הרמת תאורות, אבל לא עשית את הטבח.
אתה מכיר את התמונה מגטו ורשה? עם הילד עם הידיים ועם כל זה? ככה שיירה של נשים, זקנים, ילדים הולכים.
In any bourgeois society, and in Israel too, there are leftists, there are rightists, there are ultra-rightists, there are fascists. What does it look like? I recommend watching another movie, Forever Drink, Forever Clean, about Beitar Jerusalem, the most popular football club in Israel, its fans, ultras, and the story of two Chechen legionnaires, whom the owner of the team, the oligarch Gaidamak, brought from Russia. Beitar was proud of the fact that no Arab or Muslim had ever played in it. The club and its fan group La Familia are closely connected with the ruling circles of the country. Idols of the right appear in the stands. Netanyahu and Lieberman must play well. Yes, yes. So that they will love him too. Sitting on the internet, looking at you. True, it's an Israeli, but still, it's still understandable.
Of course, I thought there would be a reaction.
And why was it needed?
Well, exactly to emphasize it, to show society what it is.
Of course, nationalism is nationalism, apartheid is apartheid, but someone has to work at the same time. One can consider Marx a traitor for his criticism of the Jewish approach, but this will not cancel the surplus value. Therefore, strikes and the economic crisis are also very familiar to the Holy Land. It was this crisis that brought Netanyahu to power, a tough macho, the same protege of capital as Bolsonaro, Trump, Duda, Erdogan, and further down the list.
As the capital of Israel.
East Jerusalem is a place where two religious shrines are located, the Wailing Wall and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Here it is often confused with the Dome of the Kubit, a Sahara rock. The city was annexed by Israel from Jordan during the War of the 67th year. Capture Day is celebrated as a national holiday, but the point is also that, according to the forecasts of omniscient rabbis, it is here that the third Jewish temple should be restored. Well, the one that activates the end of time and the coming of the Messiah. It's not an easy task. There is a problem that remains in East Jerusalem, the Palestinians with their houses, and, in fact, the mosque is the third in the Muslim hierarchy. Are we in trouble, Ray?
I don't know. Are we in trouble, Fletcher? There are no problems.
Well, yes. And according to the Oslo peace agreements, East Jerusalem should remain for the Palestinians, who were promised their own state. And so, in full accordance with the slogan of any nationalist, we can repeat that the Israeli right, inspired by the example of the 47th year, after all, they said at the time that nothing would work for the Jews, are trying to regain not only the land for the temple, but also the most promising real estate in the spirit-saving sense. In short, the housing issue. Again, the housing issue. So this construction was here in Abraham's time. Yes, he could see it with his own eyes. Could he have seen this? Yes. This is a bit of an exaggeration. Archaeologists have told us that there is no evidence that Abraham was here. This is a fragment of a very interesting reportage of the main American television program 60 Minutes about how Jewish nationalists, with the support of the state, are trying to clear East Jerusalem of the Palestinian population. Not only are whole families being evicted, houses are being demolished, or Zionist activists are being settled in them, but the ground is being excavated under the shrines themselves. Simply put, foot, a tunnel. This reportage is 11 years old. Over the past time, it was possible to dig a subway, and most likely, the subway was dug. 500,000 tourists visit this place every year. Guides seem to be trying to resurrect King David. The message is obvious. Since David conquered the city for Jews in the distant past, it should belong to Jews today. But there is no evidence of David's presence here either. We know this from the Bible. There is no doubt that David was here. If there is a house that is being sold by an Arab family, and there is a Jewish family that wants to move in, and I can back it up with archaeological research, altogether is a great thing. I repeat, the reportage is 11 years old, as now. The policy of seizing houses and land carried out by Jewish settlers, the Jewish right, then also led to clashes. Evaluate the degree of confrontation. Palestinian boys threw stones at passing cars of Jewish settlers. Look what happened next. 2 boys are hit by one of the cars. The driver was a member of the colonists' organization. He will later tell the police that he did not stop because he feared for his life.
He felt his life was in danger.
There is a sense of invasion. The Arabs feel it. There is no other place in the world where Jews would like to live like this. Such reports are rare on American television, in the American media, where the pro-Israeli point of view prevails, and any deviation from it is declared anti-Semitism. But, after the recent outbreak of violence, when the ratio of victims on both sides turned out to be completely incommensurable, when for the first time in 90 years, all Palestinians living in Israel went on strike, other materials began to get on the air. For Muslim Palestinians, it is time for night prayer. This year, the Israeli police interrupted her without warning.
So you can see that there is Israeli police actually inside.
Yaakov, you know you've taken someone else's house. Yes. But if I leave, you won't come back to it anyway. What's the problem? Why are you yelling at me? You stole my house. But if I hadn't done it, someone else would have stolen it. This is not the land of their ancestors. They have not lived here for generations. They came here in '56 because they had nowhere to go, and someone gave them this land legally. Everything they accuse me of is no different from their own actions. So you came here from America to squeeze the Palestinians out of here, not to squeeze out the Palestinians, but to populate the Jews. But for that, the Palestinians will have to leave. No, well, it can be called a necessary evil. It doesn't matter if I'm here or someone else. A monkey or a giraffe. The Palestinians will never return to this house. I understand why they're mad at me, but I'm not the reason. I'm not doing this to them. And as I said, if I leave, I will be replaced instantly. Believe me, the one who will come in my place will not be such an easygoing guy like me. Israel is in a deep political crisis. Society is polarized. Netanyahu is under investigation on charges of corruption, bribes, and kickbacks. This process is approaching the stage of interviewing witnesses. After multiple elections and attempts to form, unsuccessful attempts to form a coalition government, the government is trembling. The people are dissatisfied. Netanyahu no longer has a roof in Washington. Instead of the half-praised Trump, in whose head, as is customary with evangelicals, the end of the world also begins with the Third Temple. Now there is an inarticulate Biden who is determined to put up with Iran in general. Netanyahu faces a simple fork in the road, either the 5th election in a row, or the mobilization of the electorate with the help of a small and victorious mess. And there, a state of emergency can be introduced if you want to reset the deadlines. Which option was chosen? You guessed it. In a broad sense, the alignment is as follows. The global economic crisis, threatening internal unrest to all states without exception. The huge military potential accumulated over the years in the region. Several bloody conflicts in the neighborhood. Syria, Iraq, Kurdistan, Yemen, Lebanon is a humanitarian disaster. And add to this a hellish cocktail of religious obscurantism in synagogues, mosques, and Christian churches. Exit.
Mahmoud.
The outbreak of violence benefits all reactionary forces, including on the Palestinian side, where Hamas is robbing. No one will justify it. And in Turkey, where Erdogan, despite the closest commercial ties with Israel, is trying to strengthen himself, now portraying the defender of the only defender of all Muslims in the world. And in Iran, where the communists have been outweighed for a long time, and the crisis in the economy is getting stronger. If in 1914, the Balkans were considered a powder magazine, today there are many such cellars. And one of them is in in front of you. What's next? Think for yourself. While there is a truce, the dead are being buried in Gaza. 232 people in a week, 65 children, half a thousand houses were destroyed, 24 schools, 18 hospitals, 2 head doctors who were available were killed. There is no desalination station anymore, and without it there will be no water. There is no single center where they tested for COVID. There is little good in Israel either. The air defense system worked no matter. 12 dead, almost 800 wounded. Hatred between people. According to the UN, about 100,000 people lost their homes in a week and a half. The United States blocked any attempts to adopt at least some resolution in the Security Council. And who would the resolution help? It is clear that the truce is temporary and blood will flow again. But every time, the chances are growing that neighbors will also start to be sucked into this funnel. For reference, with an annual turnover of $240 billion, China is now the largest trading partner of the Arab countries. However, its turnover with Israel, $13 billion already. Is it possible to unleash such a tangle of contradictions? That is, to stop a regional war in an evolutionary way?
It's unlikely.
Such a knot can only be cut. But to do this, you need to stop looking back at the thousand-year-old curses of the Indiana Jones monster and other mysticism. To do this, we will have to go against the most terrible, the most powerful force in the region, against religion. To do this, people capable of fighting together must begin to appear among the Palestinians and among the Jews. Everyone is against their bourgeoisie, everyone is against their nationalists, everyone is against their sectarians and against their obscurantists. 100 years ago, there were such people, albeit in small numbers. What shocks will it take for them to start being born again? Perhaps only the Mashiach, Muhammad, Mahdi, or Jesus can answer this question. It was agitation and propaganda. See you soon. Peace be upon your home.